7 most isolated places you never want to visit. Given how long the pandemic has been going on, it's understandable that many people are feeling somewhat wanderlust, but we're gonna change it up a little. Today, instead of focusing on those beautiful parts of the world, we're taking a look at the places you don't want to go, from an island with no escape to the world's most remote populated island. We're paying a visit to the 7 most isolated places you never want to visit. Number 7. Villa Las Estrellas. When we think of Antarctica, we think of ice polar bears and a slowly melting global catastrophe. But it turns out that it's not all like that. In fact, some of it is a Chile not Chile, but it belongs to Chile. I'm sorry, that was just a little misleading. Villa Las Estrellas is a Chilean town and research station on a military base. In fact, it's one of the only 2 civilian settlements on Antarctica, home to some 150 people in summer and 80 in winter, and given that it's in Antarctica, it's about as unpleasant and freezing cold as you would imagine. This tiny town has 14 homes, 1 bank, a post office, a school, a gym, a church, and the temperature on average is around 27 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 2.3 Celsius. Not bad given the location, but there's a catch. You see, in order to be approved to live here for an extended time, you kind of have to have your appendix removed. I know that's a pretty big commitment for a place to live. Usually, it's a little cash fee, but this deposit is all about the appendix, which for legal reasons, you won't get back. But hey, if you're gonna live in such a brutal climate, who needs an appendix, right? Number 6. Rockall. The chances of you living in Rockall is unlikely, but visiting it, well, that's just as unlikely. In all honesty, after all, Rockall isn't exactly a town or a city, but the tip of an extinct volcano, most of which is hidden beneath the surface of the North Atlantic Ocean, and almost impossible to reach, which you can see. However, it's the 65-foot tall peak of the volcano itself, and its history is both unusual and fascinating. An intriguing look at what life was like in the mid-1950s. You see, back in 1955, the British Empire was almost entirely over, but the empire was still making a few last-ditch acquisitions. The final territorial acquisition was Rockall itself, which may seem kinda strange. I mean, there's nobody to colonize on an extinct volcano. But in actuality, the British were just anticipating the trend that would later become prevalent in Bond movies. They didn't want the Russians to build the headquarters there. Okay, that's a slight exaggeration, but not much. In fact, the British were concerned that the Soviets were looking to build a missile battery on the volcano. So, they acquired it in the hopes that they could stave off that idea for as long as possible. It seems to have worked, as yet there have been no reports of missiles in the volcano for now. Number 5. Borrey Island, Scotland. It's a beautiful country, that much is for sure. But if you're looking for something a little bit more inhospitable, you just have to travel 60 miles off the mainland. There you'll find Borrey Island, one of the least hospitable islands on Earth. In fact, the island was once home to a small community dating all the way back to prehistoric times. But in the late 1930s, the island was finally abandoned. When the crops failed over time, the climate and environment became simply too much far. Well, anything in 1957, the National Trust finally took over the island and has been protecting it ever since. If you wish to visit the island, you'll need some special permission from the trust and a lot of luck to actually get there. After all, the island isn't really built to be landed on, thanks to its intense shoreline and intense waves. In fact, according to one expert, since 1957 more people have actually reached the summit of Everest than have landed on the island. Pretty wild, right? So, if you're in the mood to risk your life, now you have the choice of either Everest or this. What a time to be alive. Well, alive if you're lucky. Number 4. Bear Island. Be honest, would you even consider visiting the so-called Bear Island? The name alone is enough to make you think twice. But just wait until you hear the history of the island. This place has been the site of some much bigger drama than a few bears. Bear Island is the southernmost island in the Arctic archipelago of Svalbard, and has been a nature reserve since 2002. But long before that, it was known for a very different reason. Consistently, failed occupations. People have been trying to live on this island for as long as it's been around, and none of them have survived. After all, the island is known for its barren cliffs, little to no rainfall, and the risk of leaked radioactive material from a nearby nuclear submarine wreck. How wild that nobody has been able to live a safe and long life on this island. And of course, it's still pretty popular with tourists. Research vessels often visit the island on expeditions, while some cruise ships also stop by to bring the rest of the curious visitors. Let's hope that none of them leave with nuclear-oriented powers. I mean, it would be cool, but is it really worth the long-term side effects? Nobody needs a giant fist shooting out of their chest. Number 3. McMurdo Station. Welcome back to Antarctica, one of the least popular spots for real estate on the planet. Thankfully, we're not looking at houses in this part of the world, but a science and research facility. Interesting parts of Antarctica. Those of you that have seen the movie The Thing are probably having your spider senses tingling. Well, rest assured there are no hyper-violent aliens here right now. Back in 1902, British explorer Robert Falcon Scott was exploring the Antarctic. When he first built his base, decades later in 1956, a new group of American explorers created their base, not too far from that historic landmark. The McMurdo Station, as it came to be known, is still in action even today. The current number of residents at the station reaches up to 1258, but the number is known to drop pretty dramatically during the winter season. Because, yes, even the coldest place on Earth has a winter season. Sounds fun, right? The reason that the number drops so dramatically, however, is that there's simply no way anybody can escape during the winter season. There are no flights in or out due to the extreme temperatures. There is, however, full internet access. So, I guess you could live vicariously through those YouTube walking tour videos, better than playing chess against a computer, right? Number 2, Kerguelen. Just logically, it's a given that any community found in the Antarctic will be isolated for some reason. Humans just don't seem to like the idea of living in such freezing and uncompromising temperatures. But when your islands are also known as the Desolation Islands, you kind of have to pay special attention. The Kerguelen Islands are a group of islands in Antarctica, but the reason for their isolation is much more unique than just people don't live there. The province is mostly submerged under the waters of the southern Indian Ocean. In fact, there's so little land anywhere nearby that it's pretty much impossible to truly get away from your neighbors. Thankfully, the harsh climate and the intense loneliness mean that nobody really lives here voluntarily. All of the 45 to 100 residents are soldiers, scientists, engineers, and other experts living on the island for work purposes. So, unless you're one of these highly responsible experts looking for a home that doesn't require you to have to deal with humans, you should probably just not bother wasting your time, and honestly, that's not a bad thing. Why on earth would you want to live in such a hostile environment that doesn't even have the most basic necessities? I rest my case. Number 1, St. Helena. Welcome to St. Helena, one of the most isolated places on the planet. This tiny community is a neighbor to Tristan da Cunha and Ascension Island, but that feels generous in actuality. The islands are about 500 miles apart, but hey, when you live in an isolated part of the world, you can't expect neighbors. That's actually a plus in my experience. The island measures about 47 square miles in total, and much of the island is dominated by a 2684-foot-high mountain named Diana's Peak. The mountain also happens to be a national park. If you're into that kind of thing, as for how many people call this tiny island their home, the number is more than you were probably expecting, 4000 or so. And in fact, most of them are descendants of original British colonists. We're not going to delve into the politics of that, but enjoy the comments section. I guess, if you did want to travel to St. Helena, you're going to have to compete to get one of the very few seats open to civilians. Because, of course, the British military has found a way to profit from such a quiet island, offering flights to and from the island. Hey, if you're not making money from it, is it really a cultural landmark? Would you ever consider trekking to any of these isolated places? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.